God's walked in.
Rejoice together, for the time we are living in is the time for reclaiming our home. Brothers, listen to me, to me.
Did you know, 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 did you know that God's walking? Did you know God's walking?
All right, y'all. It's another Sunday afternoon. 3.5. It's actually 3 on the spot. I'm on with my sister, Miss Minnie Jones. My brother, the big brother, Kevin Dumpson. Say hello, everybody.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I think we have, okay, brother Hanif is here. How you doing, Hanif?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Man, listen, I woke up breathing in black, so I'm good to go. Look like we got quite a bit of stuff to talk about. We have guests coming on. My man Max Parthas should be coming on and joining us any second now. Not sure where he's at, but until he comes on, any outside of D-Moss being terminated by the great city of Springfield, or the not so great city of Springfield. Anything cats want to talk about before we get this thing rolling? Been a lot happening.
I know the topic of the day is did slavery end or something along them lines, right?
Say it one more time.
The topic of the day is about modern day slavery, and I think it's right on time. And for people who think that slavery ended, I just want to know when, how.
Yo, I'm dying to hear the answer to that one. So for anybody watching, if you got an answer for that, let me know, because slavery is damn sure full effect. I'm trying to be like my brother Kev. I just want to be permanently free. So Hanif, Kev, anything you want to add? We're waiting for my man Max Parthas to come on. We're going live. This is on deck. And yeah, talk to me.
I definitely, I think with not even just what we're talking about today, but, all the things that have happened over the course of this week, it's very important for us to understand why ownership and why, gathering together is important. I mean, no matter how you want to cut what the not so great city of Springfield did, it speaks to a larger issue. And I do like how a lot of the posting throughout this week was like, it's about the community as a whole. And we got to remember that, like, if we don't learn how to come together, how to organize, how to deploy, these things are going to continue happening. And that's one thing. And I think that this topic, as Minnie was saying, it's right on time, because this topic of what happened this past week fits into this narrative of modern day slavery, at least from my perspective.
Yo, absolutely. I would agree. I would definitely agree with that. So I got so much I want to say, but I just can't say. I just want to get it popping, but I can't get it popping. So I'm gonna hold off. What you got, Kev? You can say whatever you want to say. You free to just listen. You know who you is. You the more brother. Whatever you want to say, you can say.
I appreciate that permission, because I live that way anyways, but I appreciate it.
Absolutely. But, you know you don't need permission.
I would just say that, taking a retrospective look over this past week and what has transpired in this city, in your life, and in the lives of hundreds of other, if not thousands of others, I think this is a grand opportunity for an awakening that is long overdue. And I think if it's not handled properly, we'll end up in the same place we were before this week. And so I would just admonish everyone, and Daryl Moss as well, to like you're doing right now, be wise in your moves, calculating, and just understand that opportunities like this don't come every day, and everything that's a blessing doesn't necessarily come dressed as a blessing, but it can be
Right.
definitely revealed to be such. So I just think that this is prime time for excuse me, for substantial change to come about. And um, I see a great amount of support um, at the onset, anyways. But time will tell where the real support is at, and where the real soldiers are at, and where the real uh, 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 stand up, straight across the board people are. I was doing some writing, as the Moor is known to do, and I was just saying that all successful movements haven't been large, so we can't assume simply because of numbers that it's going to be successful. We have to be very strategic in all that we do and be careful not to repeat what has transpired in the past, where opportunities have been allowed to slip through our fingers. I'll leave it at that. But I think I think we are at a very crucial point in this city. And I will speak for probably hundreds of, like I said again, not thousands. But the city lost a very integral part of the peace mechanism known as Daryl Moss. So you've served as a firewall for between the community and this mayor, and I think they're gonna find that out when the heat really gets to them. And but we have to make sure to have focused heat. We have to put that heat
Absolutely.
right on that skillet.
Absolutely.
So I
Can't
just
just
wanted to
march.
share that.
Can't just run out there. Yep. I
Yeah, I just
appreciate
wanted
that.
to share that, man. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. What's up, Keyshawn? We're waiting for my brother Max
What's going
Parthas.
on?
Not much. Waiting for my brother Max Parthas to come on so we can talk about did she switch him back? Yep. To talk about modern day slavery. And before you came on, they were commenting that looking at the events that transpired this past week, modern day slavery exists. And again, I think no man can be enslaved unless he voluntarily does so. So for everybody who's watching this, let me just say this real quick and put this up there, Shauna. For everybody who's watching this, please don't sweat over me because I am good to go. Been bracing and prepared for that decision that they made for quite some time. Keyshawn, I'm sure you can attest to that. So a lot of people are wondering, why I made such a stupid move with that post. I can't really comment, but I am gonna say because I got a lot of folks out there who I respect. Just know that determination was coming before the post. So we knew what we was doing. I'm gonna leave it at that. And there are some good things coming down the pike. A lot of rumors out there. Don't believe what you hear unless you hear it directly from myself or somebody directly in the circle. That's all I'm gonna tell you. With that, I'm not sure what Max is, but I'm gonna give him a call and let's get him rolling. Kill just about 2 minutes worth of time. I'm gonna put on this quick video on roots and family development. Here we go.
What Alex Haley was able to do through Kunta Kinte, what we saw in Roots, was a visual representation that even under the most extreme circumstances, one had a duty to protect one's family, one had a duty to define oneself, to carry oneself with dignity, and to always strive for freedom.
They can put the chains on your body. Never let them put the chains on your mind.
Chattel slavery meant that enslaved people were the personal, private property of their owners, and law recognized that. That's why it was not uncommon for slaves to be punished with every kind of torture imaginable, whether it was the idea that if a slave runs away, let's cut off one of his toes. He runs away again, let's cut off his whole foot.
No! No, please don't!
You could not take your master to court. You could not testify in court. You could not serve on a jury. So there was no way to sort of find justice. Self-defense did not exist within the institution.
Did you really think a nigger could accuse me, a white man, of anything at all?
enslavement is fundamentally the history of commodifying human beings. That's what it is. It's about saying that your value can be reduced to a price. It's important for us to remember that enslaved people lived their lives in families because it reminds us of the ways that they were opposing their commodification. Historians and scholars use the term fictive kin, the creation of family ties in order to replace the family ties that have been so brutally wrenched from you. And I think that those are really the foundation for what we come to know about Afro-American cultural and historical life under slavery.
Yo, ornery, Mandinka ways, they done started to rub off on me.
I don't think we can really know what it meant to live under the constant fear that you might be sold away from your family. Slavery imposed a very particular experience of trauma. Sometimes it reached right into your cabin and wrenched you out of it.
It's time your family pay kunta. Run!
I never saw you.
All right, here we go. Just a quick clip that we had hanging around since we did the family discussion. And where Keyshawn go? Okay, just a quick clip. What y'all think about that? Since we were talking about the black family up until Max get here, let's go back to that conversation. A couple of areas we didn't go to. Do folks actually believe that the transatlantic slave trade?
I would have sat in the parking lot like that. I purposely had to sit.
The transatlantic slave trade, do you believe that destroyed our families?
I believe that it separated our families, but it hasn't destroyed it. The spirit of family is always going to be there. But the unique thing about black people is that we know how to create families without blood. Throughout history, we've been separated on this continent from, whatever slave owner what plantation we was on. Children were bred and sold off, but we tend to find family when we connect. It's a spiritual connection that we all have. And one of the biggest things that you ever see, doesn't matter where you go, there's a connection that you'll create family. One of the biggest ones that I did see was when my brother Kevin, who is here now in Springfield, just not on vacation, but work, when he moved out to California in the military. And everyone was a transplant in that area, but they all became family. And I'm talking about a family bond like it was blood. So it doesn't matter how distant you are. The breakage of the true blood family has happened, but we tend to connect and find each other anyway. It does take generations to rebuild, but we also have a connection of family, like it is when I walk into your house that first time, like I told you before. I walk into your house, you might show me where everything is. The second time I'm in that house, we always say, you better go get it because you family now. The family connection that we have as black people is always going to be strong and always be connected through blood or not. It's just one of the unique things that we have as a people in our culture is that we love hard and we fight hard together.
Absolutely. My man Drew, AK Soul Keaton, said, we good. Unity in the community. It's about that. What's up, Will Chapman? Will Chapman shouting out the peace sign, everybody. My sister Gabe Miller says racism and modern day slavery exist together. As long as people feed into racism, that will never disappear. Modern day slavery status can change if people come together to support, uplift, believe, step outside of various boxes to allow change to work. Sometimes change is scary, but it could work. So with that being said, perfect segue for my brother in poetry, Max Parthas. Thank you for joining us, brother. We appreciate you and happy to have you here. Can you hear us clearly? Uh-oh, Max? I think his might have froze up.
Yes, I can hear you clearly, brother. Peace. Thank you.
Peace, brother. How you doing today? Max? Can you hear us?
His camera froze again.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna keep it. So we're gonna let Max get his thing together. Max, you got it?
You said that you can't be made a slave unless you volunteer or something along those lines. And that sounds real Kanye Westish. I just want
you calling me Kanye.
No, I'm just saying it sounded real Kanye-ish. You said it's a voluntary thing. So I just wanted you to elaborate a little bit for the people. I'm asking for the people.
Damn, too early in the show, Minnie Jones. Too early. All right. I look at it like this, and it's just my personal perspective. No matter what situation you're in, I think you control your mentality. A lot of things that we blow off on other people, I think our community is stronger than that. I think we stronger than that. I think anything we do, we have our own personal motive. And I'm a little biased because I'm basing on my 12-year experience working on a plantation. So in that type of position, it's easy to be slave to the work that you're doing, easy to be slave to the paycheck, easy to be slave to the man who signs that paycheck. But it's a little difficult when you decide to do your own thing and walk around that plantation unslaved, regardless of where you're at. That's why I say that. So people may disagree, but no matter who I work for, no matter what campus I'm on, no matter what setting I am, I'm always going to be the black man that you see in front of me. And I'm not going to compromise that. I think sometimes we allow ourselves to compromise our cultural integrity. We compromise our personal integrity. And we do that for the sake of a paycheck or the sake of just kind of going along to get along with people who we consider to be the oppressors of our folks historically. That's about it. So if you want to question that, go for it.
I just wanted some clarification. That's all. I thought it was interesting. But going back to that that clip.
Nah. You ain't gonna skate over that. No, you ain't skating over that. No. You forced me to throw it out there, so I want to hear what you're thinking about my response.
I think that sometimes people take things personally when you talk about choices, and I think that people are governed by their feelings and their emotions. And I know sometimes I find it hard to communicate with people because I'm real specific and semantic, and I like definitions and stuff. And it is what it is. People hide behind their feelings. They state their feeling. They say I feel, but then they follow it with a thought. And I think that it's because it relinquishes them of self accountability, because you can't control your feelings, but you can control your thoughts. So people will say I feel like, and then make a statement. And a choice is a choice. Is a choice. Now, I mean, you could always die. You know what I mean? You could always jump off the boat, be a martyr, or anything. So there's always a choice. And I think some people feel like a hard choice when a possible choice is no choice at all. But I think in that situation, really, there's no wrong choice. At the end of the day, I don't think that anybody can be too prideful for wanting to, feed their family and keep their lights on and stuff like that. And we are put in these impossible positions every day. So I don't think there's no bad choice, but there's definitely a choice. And people make choices.
I'm a little confused.
Now what, Mar? Say something.
Now, when you say choices, I need you to expound. When you say people make a choice, like I'm trying to understand when you say choice. The choice to do what?
Like you said, when you said slavery is voluntary, I think most states of mind are choices. They're choices. People say they make. There's choices. Choices that work for you, and there's choices that don't work for you. There's choices that are your situation. There are always mitigating circumstances, and but you make it's a choice whether you choose to get along based on whatever situation you got going on, or whether you choose to. You know what I mean? There were those of us that jumped off the boats, and there were those of us that survived the trip. You know what I mean? That's a choice. And there's some of us that died trying to take over the boat. So those are choices. And I don't think either choice is a wrong choice, but I do think that a series of choices that keep yielding the same results is crazy. I think we're all insane.
Right, which means we have to make a conscious. Sometimes we have to make a conscious decision to do what's best for the tribe and not so much for the individual.
And every other culture does that with no problem.
Yeah, I agree.
Problem. They say, I don't care who you love, you're gonna marry within our community. They say, I don't care what you want to be or what you want to do. Our community needs engineers. Our community needs doctors, and regardless of, you know, their feelings matter, but they put the needs of the people in front of their own needs, and we have to do that. But we also have to create opportunities for ourselves. As long as somebody's feeding you, they're gonna control whether or not you starve or whether or not you eat. So we have opportunities for ourselves.
Yo, I mean, ownership is everything. Land ownership is everything. I agree 100%. I agree 100%.
I'd like to say something.
You're going to say something anyways, brother. Go for it.
Thank you, brother. Because I heard something very interesting there. I heard something very interesting that was said by many, which is very true. Where she says how other cultures have been known to do such. You know, you're not going to marry outside of our race, outside of our religion. But everybody, I believe most everybody is a slave on some level to something. And black people don't, who we call black people, refer to as black people, or our people, you know, that's something else that comes with the advantage of possessing tangible wealth, tangible property, inheritance that comes with that. Do you know why black people cannot, or those we call black people, cannot tell their child, you're not going to marry outside of our race, or will they have nothing to disown them from? You know, those white people who that Jewish person who wants to marry that black fella, but the family says, you're not going to marry him, because they can actually say, I'll take you out of my will, because there's something in that will that is tangible and worth something. And so that person who allows themselves to be controlled by that will, they're a slave to the will. They're a slave to the money. So the parents knew that. The ancestors knew that. And so because we've been stripped of everything or have nothing to offer, we really have zero leverage to tell our people that. So those white people who have something to lose will, okay, they'll marry that white person. They'll just cheat with that black person. You know, they'll keep them on the side. That's who they really love. But so they don't allow their emotions to override their love of finances, or whatever it was they were going to inherit. So I think that's why other cultures can seem to operate and function like that, because they always have something to hold over their children's heads. You won't inherit this 30 acres, you know, or the trust fund or the college fund. You won't get it. So we've been stripped for those reasons too, because when they stripped us of those means or of the ability to do those things, they knew what they were doing. They were stripping us of the ability to strengthen our own families and cultures, because we had nothing to really glue us together other than emotions. And anybody who's lived long enough knows that emotions can be fickle. You can be in love this week and next week not in love, but that money is going to accrue interest every day. And so it ain't fickle. And so they use that as their baton, as their bat to control and to keep their cultures together. They have something to lose. Usually we're not pooling together because we really, first of all, don't have much to pool together. And then when we do have whatever little bit means we have to pool together, it's always a fight for who's going to have more and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
I just want to throw that out there, man.
Good stuff. All right, Max, can you hear us now, sir?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Man, I hear you loud and clear.
I apologize for the technical issues, but my cell just wouldn't get a good connection, so I'm on my desktop without image. My bad.
No, it's okay, man. We just need the information, man. We good. Next time you come on, we gotta make sure we see the face. Here we go.
All right.
So take a few minutes, Max. I want you to introduce yourself, and then, like when I talked to you on the telephone, as I articulated, I'm not as familiar with this subject as you are. So I'm gonna let you take the lead on this and tell us everything we need to know about who you are. More importantly, the work that you do and why this work is so critical. Can you do that for us?
Yes, sir. My name is Max Parthas. I am the acting director for the Paul Cuffey Abolitionist Center in Sumter, South Carolina. I'm also state organizer for the Abolish Slavery National Network. We look at what we're dealing with our criminal justice system as literal legalized slavery allowed through the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, as well as 25 other state constitutions, and that includes Puerto Rico, where they have exception clauses in their constitution that allow for legalized slavery. And they use that exception clause to fill these prisons and jails for profit and control. As many as 70% of the prisoners in our prisons and jails today shouldn't even be in there. The only reason they're in there is because they've been criminalized and are used in order to generate income. And that ranges, the money that they make ranges from New York at $330,000 a year to incarcerate someone like a Khalif Browder, to Florida, where it's $25,000 to $30,000 a year to incarcerate someone. These prisons have contracts with the state that guarantee they will have occupancy rates filled from 90 to 100% for as many as 25 years. I don't know how the hell you can guarantee that a prison is going to be filled for 25 years, but these are the type of contracts that we have. In places like Alabama, prisoners' rights, human rights, and constitutional rights are being violated widespread. Eighth Amendment violations, 14th and 15th Amendment violations as well. The Department of Justice knows all about it, but is basically a paper tiger that is doing nothing. The reason that they can get away with this is because in the 13th Amendment, once you become state property through that exception clause, you no longer have human rights or citizens' rights. So we've been fighting against that for years, and we've made great strides. As we speak right now, Utah and Nebraska have their exception clause on the ballot box to be removed for November 3rd. So you can vote in Utah and Nebraska to remove the exception to slavery from their state constitution. Colorado and Rhode Island already have theirs gone, so it's no longer legal in those two states. And because of that, we've already got at least one court case that's challenging slave-like conditions in Colorado. We're in communication with as many as 13 other states that are ready, willing, and able to do the exact same thing. So our goal is to remove these exception clauses from these state constitutions, to insert anti-slavery language into state constitutions that don't have it, and eventually to repeal and replace the 13th Amendment, where it does not allow slavery in any form in the United States. Peace.
Wow. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
All right. Wow. Anybody got any questions? Anything they want to talk about what you just heard? Go ahead, Minnie.
I just want to say, from everything you said to even back to the clip, yo, it just makes me so mad. I just don't understand how people are not like furious. I don't remember. It might have been Mr. Baldwin had to say something like, to be black in America, to be mad all the time, and it just makes me so mad.
And I haven't even dropped into the details of how they accomplished this. It is horrific in what they do. Remember, I said your constitutional rights are being violated. Well, one of your constitutional rights is the Sixth Amendment, which guarantees you to the right to a fair and speedy trial by a jury of your peers. Unfortunately, 95% of all felony cases end in a plea bargain. And that means that the Sixth Amendment is a myth. It doesn't even exist. You never even get the chance to fight it in court. You're forced to take a plea bargain. And in many cases, people admit to things as guilty that they didn't even do, because they have this threat of decades of time hanging over their heads. So instead of taking 30 or 40 years, like the woman that fired a shot to protect herself but didn't shoot anyone, I forget, Marissa Alexander, I think her name was. So instead of taking 60 years, you take 10 years, and you were innocent from the very beginning. That's just one of the ways. And these prosecutors, I don't know if you're aware of this, but 95% of all prosecutors are white. 83% are white men. They spend most of their days prosecuting people of color, particularly black people. And in every state in this union, there is no state where white people are incarcerated more than black people. I'm in South Carolina. It's only about a 24% black population, and we're incarcerated at 5-1. Out where you're at in Maine over there, or in Massachusetts, I believe it's like 14-1. In Vermont, it's 12-1. In Washington, D.C., it's 19-1. It's like that all across this country. And it's not because we're any more criminal than anybody else. We are simply being targeted by this new version of slavery that happened in 1865 with the transfer of ownership. Went from the individual being able to own people to the state now managing the job through what they called convict leasing. So we really never had a moment where slavery ended, because as soon as the emancipation happened, as soon as the 13th Amendment was signed, they immediately began convict leasing in places like Texas, Alabama, and South Carolina. So in 1860, Alabama's economy was basically 85% from the slave trade. Then about 30 years later, after slavery allegedly ended, 85% of their economy was from convict leasing. There was no change for them. The change was only for us. And the thing with convict leasing is it was called worse than slavery because in chattel slavery, they had some concern about whether you lived or died so that you could work more. In convict leasing, they had a rule: one dies, get another. They literally would work you to death in mines and plantations and railroads or wherever they needed you.
Wow. So where do we go with this? Like, how can people get involved in all? I mean, what can we do? Describe the work that you're doing. I mean, in that, so that we can kind of get a little more familiar with the work process.
Well, personally, the first thing a person has to do is change their mind about what they're dealing with. You know, I've heard some of the conversation that you've had here today, and I've also listened to some of your previous episodes, and you really need to better understand what it is exactly we're dealing with. We have the largest prison population in the history of humanity on planet Earth. Nigeria, the country Nigeria, has almost as many people as the United States, and we have more black men in prison than they do. So we're dealing with something that is far beyond just criminality. So the first thing you got to do is change your mind. We have been led to believe that slavery ended. We've been led to believe that if you're incarcerated, if you end up in jail, it's because you did something wrong. At no point do we consider that, you know, America spent most of its time hunting us, capturing us, enslaving us. When did they stop? They're still doing it, but through a new fashion. So you got to change your mind about what you're dealing with and on the subject of whether or not slavery has actually ended. And that changes a lot. With us, we're single-mindedly focused on the legalities at this point. That's step one for us. You got to make it illegal. Every time we challenge this situation in a court, they use the 13th Amendment as a defense to say, look, it says right here, slavery and indentured and involuntary servitude is allowed in all states and territories in this country. And as long as they have that defense, they can keep getting away with violating our human and constitutional rights. So the first thing we got to do is make slavery illegal, because it's never been illegal. And once that's done, then we can start challenging these conditions in court. Our ultimate goal is to see freedom for our brothers and sisters who have been unjustly incarcerated. You know, statistics say that as many as 120,000 people are wrongfully convicted right now. We just had wrongful conviction day before yesterday, and that's 120,000 people, just those people alone. So we have to get freedom for the people who deserve it and who are seeking it and who need it and who have been railroaded into these horrible conditions that our prisons have become. Alabama, I want to point them out again, is at 300% occupancy. They're living in horrible squalor. As I mentioned earlier, the Department of Justice has already investigated and determined they are violating these men's constitutional rights. And instead of fixing that, they got $800 million to build more prisons. We're like black gold. Every time they put us in one of these cells, we're worth X amount of dollars to them. And this is what drives their economies. The prison industry as a whole, if you include the money spent by the government and the money spent by the people, is nearly $1 trillion a year industry. That's modern slavery. And the kicker is that although they had to switch from chattel slavery to prison slavery, it's went back to the point where the individual can now own people. If you happen to purchase stocks in 4 private profit prisons or jail bonds, you own people now. You're not buying a freaking prison. You're betting on the fact that those prisons will not only stay filled, but will grow more so that you can make more money. And that causes a conflict of interest, because if prisons are about profit, then the focus is on filling the prisons, not about criminality. I'll give you 2 websites I'd like for you to visit. One is abolishslavery.us. That is the national organization that is attempting to remove these legalities from these state constitutions. That's abolishslavery.us. Please sign up as an individual or as a group to show that you're down to help us support this fight. And we will give you things to do from that network. And also, if you're interested in finding out all of the nuts and bolts of how this works, because I know it's a surprise to a lot of people, like it clicks immediately because you know it all already, but you just needed a little push about that 13th Amendment to put it in perspective. If you want to find out even more, go to our radio program, which is abolitiontoday.org. Every week, we break down another part of this system. As a matter of fact, we'll be on air tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at abolitiontoday.org. Thank you.
All right. So I'm looking. See, Kev, where's Kev going? So I'm looking at some of the faces as Max is talking. I just kind of wonder if folks have any questions. I see there's been some triggers. Talk to me, Kev. I seen the look on your face of some of the data that he grew out. I'm just kind of curious about what you're thinking.
Excuse me. Well, first of all, I appreciate the brother coming with that data, because that's the type of data we need to be made aware of. And I am I'm actually just kind of blown away by some of the numbers, like 120,000 wrongfully convicted individuals. That's staggering, to say the least. But as I'm looking at in Alabama being at 300%, that's just inhumane, actually. But so my question is, when we get these 13th Amendment issues addressed, I mean, the system itself will still have to be dealt with, even though those issues would have been addressed on ballots. We still have a systemic judicial system that functions and operates the way they do, and I'm sure that when the ballot flips the amendments, that they're supposed to function in a certain way. But what safeguards will we have in place to assure that once we address these issues, they're going to be enforced, and that they will and also the other question will be, and how will enforcing these amendments via the ballots, how will they assist us in ceasing to be hunted? And I like the way you phrase that, because they never stopped hunting us. They hunt us every day. How will those issues be addressed? I hope I articulate that in a way that you could.
I can give you a decent answer on that. First of all, our rights are not being defended right now. We have public officials, military personnel, law enforcement personnel who all swear an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And yet, as I mentioned, our constitutional rights are not being respected nor defended. The way we're treated is they're expected to be able to violate our constitutional rights, and then we fight it in court, in a court that we know we can't afford and don't get any trials to. So it's really like a catch-22. Frederick Douglass said that we would be half free and half slave until we got 2 things: public opinion on this issue and government defense on this issue. In the same way that they defended those children who were integrated into all white schools and sent in the military, you have to have that same type of defense for our constitutional rights. There is no reason why any one of us should have our Fourth Amendment right violated at will, our Sixth Amendment, our Eighth Amendment. All these things should not be happening. So unless we have some way of defending it, I can't tell you that there's any guarantee. We've got to get the people to defend our rights who we pay to defend our rights. Otherwise, they're just a bunch of damn oath breakers who really don't believe the things that they swore and never even read the oath that they would, the Constitution that they swore to defend. If you ain't even read it and you don't know your rights inside of it, then how you going to defend it? So we have to get those people conscious of what is happening to us here in the United States. So public opinion and government defense is the only way that we'll see those rights be respected once we get the legality solved. See, when slavery is legal, you need abolitionists. When slavery is illegal, you need police and soldiers to enforce those laws because it is illegal. So we need to get those who defend our rights aware of this circumstance and on our side. And throughout the years, I've asked many policemen one simple question. On purpose, I stop them and ask them, have you ever read the 13th Amendment? I've only met 2 out of about 50 that I've asked who have actually read the 13th Amendment. So if they don't know what the 13th Amendment, which is what our freedom hangs on, says, then how can you expect them to be out here respecting the 4th or the 8th or the 6th or any of our constitutional rights? So I can't give you any really good news in that, but we must make a campaign, an educational campaign to bring people to awareness on this subject so that our rights can be defended. Hopefully I answered that as best as I could for you.
Yeah, this, for me, this brings up something else. We talk about this and we talk about criminal justice reform so much that one aspect of criminal justice reform that often get ignored is prison reform. If you look at any, as we like to call them, developed nation in the world, what they do for prisons is a whole lot different than here. And some of the things that we lock people up for here, people don't get locked up for in other countries. They go through different kinds of programs. They do things for, whereas we try to say prisons for rehabilitation, but our modern day prison system in this country has never been about rehabilitation. And until we get to the point of, when we talk about how do we fix some of these things, I think what you're telling us, Max, is valuable information that many of us, if not any of us, didn't know to begin with. But the other aspect of this is that we have to get this aspect of our criminal justice system reformed so that rehabilitation actually happens. And a prison is not necessarily a place for all of that rehabilitation, especially a for-profit prison.
Well, you're saying a few bad words. You got to adjust your language.
Okay.
and that's all part of the process of changing your mind. Let me ask you a quick question, right? We have the largest prison population in the history of humanity. Of black men only make up about 6% or 5% of the national population, but we make up 40% of the prisons. There's proof in every direction that all our constitutional rights are being violated and our human rights. Would you consider that a crime against humanity?
Yes.
How do you reform a crime against humanity?
How do you reform a crime against humanity?
Because you just said we got to reform it, right? Reform prison, reform this. You can't reform a crime against humanity. It either is a crime against humanity or it isn't. And once you make up your mind which side you're on, you're going to start looking at this thing in a very different way and reacting to it in a very different way. When you use words like reform, you're alluding to the idea that what they're doing is a mistake, that it's something that has happened by bad judgment over time. And that's not the case at all. They are doing this on purpose and always have been doing it on purpose. Many of these cities and states and counties rely on these prison industries 100% for their economy. States like Colorado couldn't do without their prisons. Here in South Carolina, it's our #1 industry. So once you decide that this is a crime against humanity, that means none of it is okay. It's all got to go. That includes the way the courts are run, the for-profit bails, the for-profit probation companies, all of these different industries that suck our very lives away are criminal industries that should not exist, and you can't fix them. You have to get rid of them. They need to be abolished. And that's why I'm a slavery abolitionist. Could you imagine in 1850 or 60 asking Frederick or Harriet, how do we reform slavery? They would probably look at you like, what the hell is you talking about? Fix it. And I don't mean no offense to you, brother. I'm just saying this is the ideas that we carry around when we talk about either reform or just abolishing parts of it when the entire system is a crime against humanity.
Believe me, there's no offense taken. I mean, the whole point of this discussion is to learn what we don't know. And this is
Thank
your
you.
field. So, man, listen, I'd rather you tell me the truth than to sugarcoat something. That's what we're here for.
Amen, brother. I appreciate you on that for sure, man. So yeah, it's really about changing our minds, and that follows by changing your language. When you talk about the system, you call it slavery because it is slavery. If the Constitution says it's slavery, then why shouldn't you? And you talk about the systems that are revolving around it as criminal industries, crime against humanity, because those are recognized worldwide as illegal. You can't reform for instance, you can't abolish mass incarceration, but you can abolish slavery.
So, Max, I want to say that I've been singing that song for a long time, which is the reason why. What I always say is that the reason why the word systemic is placed in front of oppression is the fact that this is not accidental. It's a system. It's a system that's been, if it was simply oppression, we'd call it oppression. But it's a systemic form of oppression. It's something that they've actually sat down and taken thought to as to how what they did was they didn't change their game. They refined their game. So They knew they couldn't do it in the way it had been done in the past, but they didn't want to do away with it. What they did was they just refined their game, and so I'm glad to hear you say that about this, because in my mind, I've always been riding on the fact that if we're using the word systemic in front of the word oppression, that in itself is indicative that this is not accidental. It's a system. It's something that's been put in place. It's something that is structured and thought out. And the oppression that we face here is definitely systemic. It's not accidental. I don't believe it's accidental. And I never have. Well, not once I attempted to. Well, no, I can't say I attempted to become enlightened. It was just my nature to kick against the pricks when I discovered that that there was a double standard and a caste system in place in this country. As I matured, and I just found out, man, I'm not being treated like everybody else. And so I took my own innate umbrage and turned into what has been referred to as an angry black man or an intimidating black man. But Daryl Moss knows I'm just an unapologetic black man. And so, but I appreciate hearing that, though.
Word. My pleasure, brother. Should I answer that question that popped up on the screen there?
I can't even read it without my glasses. I don't know.
Have we ever had constitutional rights? Remember Dred Scott, Judge Roger B. Taney said no rights. That it actually said that the colored man has no rights that white men are bound to respect. And with that being the case, do we really have a chance to abolish slavery? I think we have a better chance than our ancestors had at this point right now, simply by sheer numbers. You see, people are really divided about what's happening right now, and whether they understand it's slavery or not, that division is forming deeper and deeper. So we've never actually gotten this job done. My suggestion is let's try it and see what happens. Let's make slavery illegal. It's never been illegal before. So let's give it a shot and then see how the dominoes may fall, because we believe that this is the core issue that all our other problems surround. So poverty, homelessness, educational disparities, all of these things strive from the fact that slavery is still legal. And at any minute, they can pick any one of us up and put us in a prison, and we have no chance to even defend ourselves for anything. It doesn't matter what you're doing. No one is safe at any time. You have a lottery ticket, and at any point, your number can come up, and you can end up a hashtag or one of the many millions who never even make it to a hashtag and instead are sent directly into these prisons where they become one of the 120,000 who are wrongfully incarcerated, or one of the 400,000 who can't afford a lawyer, and so they languish in these prisons. So yeah, man, there's a couple of videos that I brought in today. I really would like to share some of them because I know one of the questions that people have put to us is that how is prison like slavery? It's not like slavery. People aren't being bought and sold. They're not being forced to work. There's not all these things going on. Well, I want to show this. I think it's like a 40-second video, if D. Moss has it, called Immigrants for Sale. A gentleman snuck into an auction where they were selling a for-profit private prison, the Clayton Correctional Institution. And while he was in there, he recorded what the auctioneers were actually selling in their own words. So if you can play that, you should listen to it very closely. They will tell you exactly what it is that they're doing.
The detention center that I'm going to sell today really is state of the art. It's as good as it can possibly get. You have the people coming into that pipeline, so you have an endless supply of product. No matter what your business is, what you're looking for, we will have a steady supply of people in America to fill this facility. $5 million, you want to bet $5 million, fine. I have $5 million, you want to bet $5 million, fine. $5 million, you want to bet $5 million, fine. Yes, thank you, got $5 million, 100. Now give me $5 million, 200.
In the state of Arizona, this is legalized racial profiling.
You heard it with your own ears and saw it right there. The man said that he referred to people as products and confirmed that you would have a steady supply of people here in the United States to fill this facility at all times. That's an auction of people. Questions?
That's no questions. That's insane, but not surprising. Anybody have any questions on that? Max, there was a question. Emma Genesee asked the question. She said, would that require global powers, the involvement of global powers to abolish that?
Yes, yes, it does. And we are already reaching out to other nations for support on this cause, not only because it's happening to us here in America, but because the for-profit private industries have grown global. In Africa, the largest employer on the entire continent of Africa is a company called G4S, which is a prison company. That's how large they've grown. It's the third largest privately owned corporation on earth, and it didn't even exist until the Clinton crime bill. The Geo Group is another global prison company, and they've run places like Guantanamo Bay, where they had the crimes against humanity were happening to the Haitian immigrants there. That was the Geo Group. They also run all the prisons in the entire nation of Australia, as well as even in Israel. What are happening with the Palestinians there are through these for-profit private prisons that have taken hold all across the world. Once again, America is exporting its version of slavery to the whole world. When Haiti had the earthquake, one of the first things that was offered to them was to build new prisons, Geo Group prisons, there in Haiti as a way of economic recovery. Think about that, a prison as economic recovery. And right now in Haiti, some of the worst human rights atrocities are happening in those for-profit private prisons right now in Haiti. So it is a global problem. And because of that, we've reached out to nations like Ghana, Zambia, as well as we've been in discussions with the Queen Mother of Benin. So we're looking to get the United Nations to recognize what's happening here in the United States as a form of legalized slavery. And if we should do that and get the world on our side, we can just about get this thing done.
Insane. How do we get this type of information out to the community, especially since our folks have a tendency to read anything they see in the media? If the media says this is legit, it's legit. How do we get this information out? How receptive have your audiences been in the past to the information that you're disseminating?
Well, I must admit that mainstream media is complicit in the problem. Many of their people who pay their bills also are involved in for-profit prison industry, so they don't show us any love whatsoever. We've had 2 national prison slave labor work strikes where they barely recognized that it happened, and it covered 24 states. So we get our message out through a lot of media like the one that we have right here, right now. Independent media is one of the ways to hear about this. We have our program every Sunday, as we mentioned, called abolitiontoday.org, abolitiontoday.org, where you can hear all of these different stories about every aspect of it. You can also get information from the Abolish Slavery National Network at abolishslavery.us. There are other places that you can find it, but I want to send you the sources I know are legit. You know what I mean? So if you follow those 2, you can get a great deal of information. But the biggest piece of information that you could ever get is to simply read the 13th Amendment. It's only 47 words. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out what it says when you read it. Don't overlook it like we've been taught in school and just go past the except for prisoners duly convicted part. Consider it for 5 minutes. That's all anybody needs to do, and they'll realize what it is we're dealing with once they start looking around them and counting heads in prison and seeing where all this money is going. George Floyd was murdered in public. One of the things we tend to forget about is that he was murdered over $20 because they thought that he had a $20 counterfeit bill, and that was enough for the slave catchers to come out and hunt him down and kill him. This is just like 1850 or 1860. There's not much difference. There you go.
Okay. Wow. Emma says the Zapatista movement was strengthened to a global scale, which created a pressure great enough to bring its leaders to negotiate with the Mexican government. Are you familiar with that?
No, I can't say that I am. I'm sorry.
Okay. Emma, if you're listening, can you just, I'm not all that familiar, slightly, but not to the point that I can explain it. If you can just expound on that in a post, I'll gladly share with everybody this information we may be able to use. So again, in terms of taking your information directly to the public, the general public, the folks that you've been speaking to, have you been able to convince people, get people to rethink and reshape their mode of thinking around this?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier in the program, we've already got 13 states involved. So that's 13 states that have been actively thinking about this enough to say, let's organize and let's get this done. And we have a total of 26 states that we'll be bringing on board by the end of the year. By the end of this year, half the country's legislation will be on board to eliminate pro-slavery language from state constitutions. That's monumental. And that says a lot right there, that they are listening. And not only are they listening, but they've decided to get active and do something about it, at least about this core issue of legalized slavery. So getting the message out there has been great for us, especially in the past 5 years or so. I personally witnessed the prison industry lose as much as $15 billion because of the efforts that we have put forth through divestment campaigns and re-educational efforts. So they've lost as much as $15 billion through divestment. Just last week, Harvard presented oral arguments. The Harvard divestment group presented oral arguments against Harvard that they were profiting off of legal slavery because of the 13th Amendment and their personal investments in for-profit prison industries. During the Clinton administration, the Harvard endowment funds went from $4 billion to $20 billion because of their investments in the prison industry. Other universities have done the same. Columbia University got rid of $30 million that they had invested. And the teachers union, through some research, for instance, we found out that the teachers union had as much as $100 million invested in the construction of for-profit private industries, which is a conflict of interest. They didn't invest that money personally. It was done through their 401ks and through their retirement programs, through money managers. But nonetheless, you got teachers who are retiring based on how many of our children end up in prison.
Yeah. All right. Wow. Anybody? I'm trying to, Max, I apologize. I'm just trying to digest everything that you're saying.
Dude, I know it's mind-blowing. It's like you just opened the door and there's a whole new world you hadn't even realized was there, but you knew it was there all along. You just didn't have it click right. And I'm hoping I can give you that click moment today where it all comes together and you see the whole picture and what the answer to that problem is.
Yeah, I think the most interesting part about it is the operations and how it functions from the top down. That, you know, especially me, I had no idea. That's not, you know, one of my my eyesight is never on that part of that part of the system. But, you know, when you look at it, it's mind blowing, and all the information that's coming out about it, man. I it's actually hard to even fathom that this is in place and legalized and able to be forced and implemented throughout this entire country.
The biggest jumps for this came during certain presidential tenures. So we remember the answer to the Black liberation movement was Nixon's war on drugs, right? So in 1971, when Nixon decided to declare war on drugs, there were only 196,000 prisons nationwide. We found out later on, of course, through one of his key people, that he knew all along what he was doing. He was actually targeting blacks and anti-war protesters, saying that we can associate the anti-war protesters with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, and then we can go into their communities, disrupt their communities, arrest their leadership, and target them with this war on drugs. That was what the purpose was. It was the reply to the Black liberation movement. So that 196,000 prisoners soon jumped to 2.2 million prisoners after that. The second jump was the Clinton administration. Well, let me not skip Reagan. Reagan came in, of course, and he legalized for-profit prisons again, with the first for-profit prison being a women's prison in Louisiana. So that opened the door for people to once again be able to purchase human beings through stocks and bonds. The Clintons perfected that, and they helped to create these giant global monsters that we have now, like the GEO Group and G4S and CCA, through their initial public offerings in 1994, the Cornell Corrections Company. From 1994 to 1998, their stocks increased tenfold just during the Clinton administration. They literally introduced this company, put out IPOs, made money on this prison stock, and here we are 30 years later with them being among the largest companies on earth.
Wow. I got wow. I got to go back just a little bit, Max. Give me a second to that question by Emma. Ty, are you there? Hold on. Ty Allen wants to explain a little bit about. Go ahead, Ty. You're on right now to explain. You got to unmute, brother. If you can hear me, unmute.
I don't think I'm muted. Hello?
There you go.
First of all, big love to everyone on this call. Of course, to my brother Max. It's been a long time, Max. I hope you're well. You know, as someone, first of all, to address Emma's conversation, part of what made the Zapatista movement so powerful was that they had geography, they had unity, and they had guns. You come to the table.
Ty, can you mention that they had, what was that last thing they had?
I'll say it again. They had geography, they had unity / legacy, and they had guns. It is easier to have a conversation with someone when they have all three things and they don't have wealth, because wealth is the other one. So 3 of the 4 will get someone to the table. Less than 3 or 4, no one comes to the table. The Zapatistas also did something that was smart. As they grew in land takeovers and incorporating more hamlets and more villages into their EZLN, which is the primary group, they began to understand that at some point you have to speak to the larger group. That's something that doesn't happen here in America too often. I've been, as someone, I don't use the word abolitionist on purpose because I got convinced these crazy black people who think they're moderates, they gotta come join us. So I use the word reimaginer. It's the same ass shit. But one of the things when dealing with black and white Americans, white supremacy works in three ways. Or as my homegirl says, white terrorism works in three ways. It is xenophobic, it is racist, it is classist. And if you go to somewhere like Iowa, for example, there are private prisons. There ain't nary a Negro in those prisons. All the prisoners come from poor zip codes in those places. They've been using the prisons and the police for, now we know, for centuries as means of controlling not just black people, but their own people. So when the brother said reform earlier, I cringed. I was like, oh my God, not reform, man. We got to get rid of them. We have to, or the word I use now, we have to reimagine, restructure. Reform is like taking a falling cake and adding icing to the bitch. It's still a falling cake. And when the cake falls, you may give it to the kids or the dog. You go in there and you try a new recipe, a new oven, a new way of doing it, a new pan. You do things differently. Because if you do it the same way, all you end up doing is bringing the same problems to the table. We have to reimagine, we have to abolish, we have to restructure, because when we do those things, then we can have a new society. But it's important to remember that outside of New York, outside these major cities that are probably primarily black, the police are bullies. And there's two ways the police have been created in America, and kind of goes to the Zapatista thing as well. One, in the South, they were there to catch slaves and indentured servants. In the North, and Northeast and Northwest, they were used as a way for politicians to control immigrants, poor, and blacks. Similar but dissimilar. But in both areas, it's for the government to control the people and have them fighting each other. The police are a means to create chaos more than they are to create law and order. Because cops don't stop crime. Cops come after you when the crimes are committed. A very important thing to remember. They are there to come after you after the crimes are committed. They don't stop crime. It ain't like it's Batman or Justice League who try to stop the end of the world. These fools come when the world's done. The building on topple, the bomb don't go off, the guy's been shot, she's been raped or robbed. They show up then. Because they really are just bully tactics or they are racial tactics. They are not here for your good. Well, I don't say that. I'm on the radio. Wait, Daryl, you don't work there no more, so fuck it. They're not here for your good. We are there now.
Grab your rifle.
So now I can be a little more. Cause last time I was on this show, I had to watch my mouth because it was you. Now I can go there. Fuck that. Cops are not there for your good. They are not there for law and order. They are there for control and economics. There's a very big difference on how they run. And in other parts of the world, let's not be fooled either. What seemed like a better system really is not. Those systems of policing and incarceration in places like Sweden that look much nicer and sound differently, it still follow the money. The money is not going to prisons, it's going to rehabs that end up being opened by people who steal conglomerates. It's always a conglomerate attached to prison, whether it's reclamation, whether it's rehabilitation, whether it's just straight peonage in prisons. The money is always following the corporations who are using, whether it's white people or black people, as means of creating more commerce for the 1%. I don't care where it is. America looks like the way it is here. In the Nordic countries, like where it is there, it is still about the cash flow. Don't get it fooled because it looks better. It's still, in that yard, it's still a prison. It's still not that green. It just look green. Well, yeah, it is that green. The green is money. The green is not better grass.
So Ty and Max, so would you say this isn't a racial situation, it's an economic situation?
It is a control situation from what I said. It's
when
about...
You say controlled, expound. I want to make sure that I'm clear. I want to make sure that our listeners are clear.
So look how police were started. We know of the slave catchers in the South. That's a very well oiled and well told story. Mm-hmm. And the three places that police started in the North, Boston, New York, and Philly, oftentimes they were used as a way for the controlling parties, that I think at the time were Democratic or Republican, I can't remember, to use the word influence, immigrants to join them. 1. 2, to battle political clubs that were not part of the entrenched, which usually means the money. So when you're in New York and you see the the Bond Street and you see the Tammany Hall folks, they were using the police to coerce and get folks to work in their way. And they were using bully tactics. The New York NYPD has been around for 175 years. If you read the manuals of 1845, you're like, these are not cops. This is a gang of thugs running through the streets, bashing you in the head. So the Irish joined, the Italian joined, so they could be part of the system. And then the system used them to control other groups, or the Eastern Europeans. And of course, you know, us brown and black folks, we're always on the outside looking in because we're easy targets. But if you check in other parts of the country, the zip codes of where the high rates of police and state violence happens is either in black and brown communities or poor white community zip codes. It's not by accident. The police are there to control. They're also there now as a means of commerce. So you can run them, even though the prison pipeline I don't have to go through all that. But we see where places like in Detroit and upstate New York, they don't, upstate Michigan or upstate New York, that don't have the factories, the prisons become a centric force for economics. You get things we don't think about. A prison leads to more parking. A prison leads to more stores. A prison leads to more diners. These things were existing there before, but they were there for the factories and for the labor work. Those laborers are now your COs. They're now your parole officers. They're your probation officers, and they're the centrics that around this one prison system. These things are all about the money. And as you mentioned earlier, G4S, which started in the Netherlands, I believe, which makes sense because the Netherlands are the racists who helped start South Africa. So don't forget that either. These folks in G4S are all over the world. There's G4S South Africa, G4S Nigeria, G4S India, G4S I think Argentina and Brazil. These companies are all over the place, and they're using these small towns that no longer have factories to make money out of out of America and America. Everything Max earlier, because when I was listening to it earlier, I was like, oh my God, thank you, Max. Max for the win, because these are the conversations that don't happen. Right now, I have about 10 different clients running in New York and possibly one in Springfield. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is trying to get this conversation in a way that the average moderate black and brown American and even white Americans in poor neighborhoods are afraid to have. But we put it in a way that they understand, slowly but surely move them more toward either the reimagined conversation or abolition. Because it's not a race. It's 100 yards. It's a 56-mile marathon that we'll be doing for the next 10 years. I know in New York, at least we have a 10-year plan. And I'm trying to get my cats in Indiana and North Carolina to think the same way. And like I said, simply Western Mass, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to start people to see what is in front of them, as Max put it. But folks have been told to read the first 36 words and the last 17. We won't talk about that.
Okay.
That's not important for the white folks. But now we want to make sure it is important for everyone to see that the veil can be lifted and the skirt can be pulled up, that this woman is not wearing knickers.
Hey, just want to let you know, New York is on board the Abolish Slavery National Network. They're unable, or you know, right? They're unable to change their state constitution because we require a congressional convention in New York. So instead, they're going to write legislation to legally end slavery in New York, which is awesome.
I'm helping to write some of it. So we
see, you know what I'm talking about. You know, that's it. Tell them what's happening.
Fact, those poems we did 10 years ago weren't by accident.
Yo, there was some things that you had said that I want to touch on, and I also want people to see another short video. So I want to lead up to that video, if that's okay with you guys. Well, you mentioned about the police being slave catchers here in the South and in the North, kind of a different thing. Well, I would disagree with that. They were slave catchers in the North as well. They were using convict leasing there before the South started using it. The actual first version of the 13th Amendment came in 1777 in Vermont, and it's still in their constitution today, which says that you can be enslaved if you agree to it after the year of after you're 18 years old, or if you don't pay your bills or the like, or for convictions of a crime. So that's in their constitution today. They were the first ones to introduce it. From there, it went to places like Alabama and Ohio, who adopted it, all the way up to 1865 when Lincoln finally said, you know, this is the answer to our problem here. We don't need to get rid of slavery. We can transform slavery and have the state take control of it. And throughout all of that, the police were enforcing those black codes and pig laws and all of the vagrancy laws, whether it was in South Carolina or in New York. So right now, even in New York, they make more money on slavery than anybody else in the country. To incarcerate Khalif Browder is $350,000 a year in Rikers Island. The average adult price in Rikers Island is like $200,000 a year to incarcerate somebody. That's not about justice when you're talking about numbers like that. That is an economic development program. Or as Martin Luther King Jr. said in his speech in Galilee, that the white man is not doing what he thinks is morally right. He's doing what he thinks is economically profitable.
Yeah. I'm going to pause on that one for a quick second.
I want to play the convict leasing clip. It's Convict Leasing in 2 minutes or so, it's titled. And it's got Henry Gates as the author or the host of it. And he explains what we were dealing with then and what we're dealing with now, so people get a better grasp of it.
Okay, here we go.
The labor system that took shape in the late 19th century developed coercive means to ensure that cotton remained king. It was called convict leasing. Get arrested on a minor charge or a trumped-up charge, you could find yourself locked up and then hired out to a corporation bidding on inmate labor. The pipeline from prisons to profits in this country has deep roots.
The aftermath of slavery was in some ways worse than slavery itself. Unlike before, when someone who owned you, driving you too hard was counterproductive because you would lose your investment. Convict leasing was different. You could get them cheaper, and if you actually drove them to death, there was more where that came from.
In the 13th Amendment, which ends the institution of slavery, of course, there is a loophole. Convicts who have been convicted of a crime, they actually can be forced to work for free.
In Alabama in 1850, 99% of the people who were incarcerated were white. In Alabama by the 1880s, 85% of the people incarcerated were black. So we could have a debate about how many of those black people were actually innocent, or we could have a conversation about the use of the criminal justice system to target both the innocent and the guilty alike. That continues all the way to the present, where even today, about just under 40% of the nation's prisoners are black, and yet the African American population is about 13%. They are snatching up bodies everywhere to fuel this system.
The idea in which more money can be made out of their incarceration is still very much part of our criminal justice system.
Okay, Max.
Well, again, you know, it's clearly explained what the problem is, and that's the missing link, so to speak. We often go from slavery, we say slavery ended in 1865, and then we had Jim Crow. Well, it wasn't just Jim Crow. Convict leasing was a key element of Jim Crow, and we never even mention it. Even though in places like New York, we found mass graves of convicts who had been worked to death. In Sugar Land, Texas, mass graves of convicts who had been worked to death. And these weren't white convicts. These were black men, women, and children who had been literally worked to death through convict leasing. See, the results of Jim Crow was to criminalize you and put you into these chain gangs or put you to work through convict leasing. Jim Crow was a lot about laws, some, you know, that were going on. And then once you broke those laws, you went right back into slavery. But they didn't really expand on it, as I mentioned earlier, until the modern age, where we went from 196,000 to 2.2 million in almost no time at all, because they realized just how profitable this thing could be. And then it became a global problem once again. So that's how it works. And convict leasing is the missing link. That's something that you should add to your conversations when you start talking about how slavery ended, because it didn't. Convict leasing took its place as a replacement for slavery. So now you couldn't have individuals owning people, you had the state managing it. And that didn't change until Reagan came along and once again made it possible for individuals to own other human beings. There is one more thing I did want to mention.
Okay.
Another transference or transformation that has occurred that is really unique in our society, and that's warehousing bodies. We used to use those bodies for hard labor. Well, they don't do that anymore. The labor is there. Companies like Unicor, which is a government-owned corporation, make $1 billion on nothing but prison labor. They do jobs for companies like AT&T and Victoria's Secret and Idaho Potatoes and Whole Foods and on and on and on. But the main amount of money that they get is simply by warehousing your body. So the taxpayer pays X amount of dollars for you to be in a cell. And all you have to do is sit on this cell like a piece of meat, and they make their money. So warehousing bodies is effectively a new phenomenon in our society. And that's where most of the money comes from.
All right. Anybody? Anif? Sean? Miss Minnie? Anything you guys want to add? Question? Anything? Like I'm talking to the kids in the back of the classroom. I'm just trying to process this.
They in the back. We all in the back of the classroom because this is like new knowledge for all of us. I can attest that for me because I'm sitting back digesting all of this because, like I said, this is uncharted territory for me. But just to hear all of this information, it makes me want to research and figure out how can we, dismantle all of this stuff in Massachusetts and also throughout New England, out throughout the country. Because it seems, it doesn't seem like, but it is, bringing us back in time to make sure that they can keep us in shackles. And this is the way that they do it. And they're profiting off of it even more than what they did when it was slavery. So it's just an enhanced way of making more money off of our backs and killing us and giving us nothing. So it's more or less, D, that sundown town has arrived and living well throughout this whole country and will never
go ahead,
away.
Minnie. I seen the pow. Tell me what you're thinking.
Man, I thought I knew some shit. I thought I knew some things. And I was aware of, private prisons, contracts with the state, and how they still benefit globally from our oppression and just legalized slavery. And I've heard a lot of my mentors talk about, going to world courts to charge this country with crimes against humanity. But the way he dropped them jewels, it was just like crazy, and it makes me so it just makes me so mad. So I definitely I'm gonna sign up to the website, and he said that they was gonna tell us what to do and give us things to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Me, I got time. I'll make time for this. And I also wanted to point out the bail system, and how you can literally buy your freedom whether you're guilty or innocent, as long as you can pay that bail, you can get out. And he talked about them being oath breakers, and I just thought to myself, have they ever been anything but oath breakers? That's why I really don't prescribe to changing the system from the inside out. And he talked about how officers don't even know the Constitution, because it don't take nothing to be an officer. They don't. How do they enforce a law that they don't understand? And that's crazy to me. And he also mentioned how we definitely have better chances than our ancestors, and I think we have a responsibility to finish the work that they started. You know what I mean? Like the civil rights movement, if you want to call it that, it wasn't finished. It was never done, and because we have way more resources and a better chance than our ancestors, we have to do something. But I think a lot of us don't know what to do, especially when you talk about such a global monstrosity that's just been going on and refining itself for centuries. So tell me what to do. You said abolish slavery.us.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what to do.
Well, as I said, the most important thing that a person can do is change their mind. And I want to warn you that, like myself, and many others that I know who have found out about this information, I went through all 5 stages of grief. Like literally, I went through all 5 stages because it's that dramatic, when you realize the level of betrayal and how many bodies are in the ground and behind bars because of these monsters doing what they're doing to us. And just, you might blame yourself for not seeing it sooner. Like, it was there all along. How could I not see it? I felt like that. You know what I mean? And then you want to act, and you realize, as you said, that this is a global monster. It's like saying, I'm going to take on the devil and win. But yes, that's what we're going to do. Take on the devil and win. Slavery is like one leg in a 3-legged stool in which they control the resources and narrative and the processes. When you take that resource of slavery, $1 trillion a year out, the stool is going to collapse. So white supremacy, racism, all those things will start to collapse because, look, for instance, with racism, right? If a white woman, or Karen as they call them, can use her cell phone like a gun anytime she wants to and vicariously shoot you with some of these racist police for any reasons whatsoever, what happens when she no longer has that power? She's like a dog with no teeth, just barking at you. Can't do nothing to you, But as long as they have the power of the courts and the police in their pockets, that's when racism really becomes effective against us. So we take a lot of that power away simply by ending slavery and then following through with it, freeing our people. In the abolitionist movement, we have 4 goals that we'd like to achieve. And they have to be done in specific order. You can't do another one before the first because that would mess everything up. Number 1, end slavery. Legally end it. I mean, where's the problem? Nobody would disagree with us on that, right? If it says it's legal, we should end it, right? Okay. Free the enslaved. Don't leave our brothers and sisters and young men and women behind in those cages like they don't matter. They do matter. They're not all murderers and killers. In the year 2017, more people were arrested by police for simple possession of marijuana than for all violent crimes combined. Do they deserve to lose their lives because we don't care? Yes, we care. So free the enslaved. And then a third is discuss reparations and reconciliation. You cannot get reparations before you end slavery. Could you imagine what would happen after that? If they don't end slavery now, what do you think they'll do after they paid you for it? You know what I mean? Like, we don't care. We'll do whatever we want now. We already covered our debts. So you should have asked us before. It's like taking a drug company to court who is killing people with their drugs, right? And everybody gets their class action money and they walk away, but the drug company was never required to stop selling the drugs. What happens next? They can kill people and get away with it over and over and over again. And that's why we have to end slavery. It's got to be a part of the reparations discussion. We want slavery ended, and because that is our end date, this is what we're looking to get as reparations, whether it's land or money or power or whatever it may be. We have to recognize that the problem we're looking to get reparations for is not over yet. I mean, if somebody was assaulting you, you wouldn't stop in the middle of the assault and say, let me get some reparations for this assault while they're still assaulting you. So it's a matter of perspective at this point. And then the final step is support Black autonomy. If we decide with whatever it is that we have collectively gotten to start our own communities, even our own nation, it's no damn body's business but ours, because the people who have been doing it now for centuries are apparently not capable of looking out for our best interests. And if we choose to put together our own way of living, our own government structures, then support that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that last part, because separation has to be a viable option. Jacqueline Williams says, my interest has always been the school to prison pipeline and how it affects populations impacted with intellectual or developmental disabilities. You totally explain how this top population can be profitable even if they do not perform labor. Alexandria Jones says, we don't know what to do or where to start.
Okay.
Talk about it.
I'll answer both of those. First of all, about the kids. Children, women, and the homeless and immigration are all virtual new territories for our enslavers. Children require much more funding than adults. I mentioned Rikers Island, so I'll stick with that. Khalif Browder, at 16 years old, was incarcerated. It was $350,000 a year to incarcerate him. That is a bounty on our children's heads. They put him in because he was accused of stealing a backpack, not because he actually did anything. He was accused of stealing a freaking backpack, and they immediately made him worth $350,000 a year simply because they put him into that cage. In New Jersey, it's $220,000 a year. Here in South Carolina, to incarcerate a teenager, it's $160,000 a year. I don't know how much it is in Massachusetts, but I suspect it's somewhere near $200,000 because, y'all got some money over there to spend. But all across the country, incarcerating children is extremely expensive to the taxpayer. And if you just gave the parents a fraction of what you would spend to put them in a cell a year, you would never see their children in those cages. So those are bounties on our children's head. And women are the next most expensive. So women might be 30% more valuable as a commodity than men. And then finally, the cheapest are men, which make up 94% of the prison population. Even in that video, he made an error when he said that just under 40% of the prison population are African Americans or black people. Well, that's not how it works. 96% of the prison population are men. So that means that 6% of the national population makes up 40% of the prison population. So that's in regards to children. These are bounties on our children's head. You mentioned the bail industry, and that was a good example. Only 2 countries in the whole world use a cash bail system, America and the Philippines, and they both use it for the same reason. And the rest of the world doesn't use it for the same reasons. It's immoral. It's unjust. It gives people the opportunity to pay their way out of freaking jail. And if you're rich and guilty, as Brian Stevenson says, you have a better chance than if you're innocent and poor. So yes, hide your wife, hide your kids. That's what I'm saying.
Literally.
Here's another question. And Ty, I know you want to jump in. How does one prisoner generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue annually?
Through the taxpayers. This is what they budget per cell allotments. So for every cell that is filled in Rikers Island by a teenager, that's X amount of dollars that they say they require to do it. But the numbers don't lie, and they tell you exactly what it's all about. It doesn't take more than $250,000 to incarcerate a young black man in these terrible conditions that you call prisons and jails. It doesn't take that. So it really is all about economic development, using the prisons as the way to get those things done. And it's very shameful to see the racism that's involved. And I know people might point at places like Rikers Island and say, look, although most of the prisoners are black, yes, most of the guards are black too. Are they racist slave catchers as well? And the answer is yes, but they only represent a small portion of the overall system. So, they're complicit in all of this, but that doesn't make them racist. What it makes them is supportive of racism and white supremacy. Black people can't be racist. They don't have that problem, but we can certainly endorse it like a mofo. And we do.
Yeah, we do.
So Daryl, on that one, to Aden, not amend. One of the things we were arguing here about criminal. We've been talking a lot about here in New York, language we use. One of the things we've been concentrating on is criminal justice, not police, not prisons, because the entire system in New York, I think about that, more intimately, is built on, as you said, making money. So $1 billion to the police department, if set that $1 billion into the community, you'd have less police, you're less incarcerated. But of course, it makes more sense in some deviant's mind to have more prisoners than to have more functional adults and functional youth, which tells you a lot about. I mean, a white man once told me, "We don't love our children. How do you expect us to love y'all?"
Holy shit!
and when they're acting toward themselves, how else can they act toward us? There's a larger problem that they call economics, but hell, their own economic system. Adam Smith has a very big chapter where he says Your nation is defined by how your rich and well-to-do support and build your poor and and you're challenged. That's a very big part of capitalism that somehow they forget when they do everything else. They just kind of jump over that one. They go to the exploitation part, but they forget about the part where he said you got to support your own. This system is not supporting your own.
Okay, I got someone throw it to you, Max. As Black folks across the country debate whether to vote or not vote, moving forward, should questions like this, should topics like this be part of the national conversation around which candidates we support? If they're not supporting abolition, should we not? I mean, how do we do this?
I mean, Max, you want to go first on that one, or we do that one first?
I mean, if you ready to go ahead and do your thing, man. I got it covered after.
It's a simple answer. Fuck yes.
All right.
Into the specifics. I've been approached a lot. This weekend, I gave a speech on in a neighborhood on voting rights, and I was approached by a few candidates and, yo, can we come to your PAC? And I was like, nah, bro. I've seen your past on how you treat the criminal justice system. You are a friend of the PBA. I'm not. Good luck and God bless in future wars. I'm not here to support those who do not understand or not willing to understand, because I'm not expecting everyone to walk into the room knowing what everyone else knows. Because part of growth is sitting down and being humble to know you don't know something. If you're not willing to come into the room to see that there's more than what you actually know, I can't fuck with you. And part of that is understanding that there's a national crisis, an abolition, a reimagining, a restructuring, anything except reform. I can't use that word. About how the criminal justice system works, not just from the police to the courts to the government to style. I can't rock with you, and I don't. I tell friends and enemies and frenemies, you shouldn't either, because the more this happens, at some point, as he said, that lottery ticket or that ticket in your pocket will be clipped, and you will be clipped, and you will find yourself in this system too, and then you realize why we out here marching and legislating and writing policy and on these shows like this to get folks to understand that the change is not just important, it's inevitable, it's vital, and overall is necessary.
Okay.
Amen to that. And I would add this, that yes, voting is very important right now. And as a member of the Abolish Slavery National Network, we've had this discussion. And here's what was said. We're going to make this so that the single most important issue that determines whether a person gets a seat or loses it is going to be slavery abolition. That's our intention. And we don't expect to have that type of effect this election season because we just formed the organization just a little over a month ago. But by the next election, we certainly will. But besides that, we don't just want you to vote. We want you to be an abolitionist running for office. We're supporting abolitionist candidates all across the country. Just 2 months ago, we introduced a presidential candidate by the name of Mark Charles, and his top of his list is to remove the exception clause and end slavery. He's also a dual citizen, both Navajo citizen and American citizen out of Washington, D.C. You can find him at markcharles2020.com. So we've got this Native American who is a slavery abolitionist running for president. We've supported candidates who have gotten office in House of Representatives, Congress, Senate, governors, and even a potential mayor who's sitting in the chair right there, right now, who is very likely an abolitionist himself. So don't just vote, run for office as an abolitionist so that we can get this problem solved. We've got to stop chasing our tails and chasing shadows and treating symptoms, because we will do that forever. Instead, let's focus on the source of our issues, solve that problem, and then move on from there.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
One more then. When Max said about running for office, I'm gonna make this assumption. He'll tell me if I'm wrong. The offices are not just council and mayor. It is civil court judge. It is Cherokee court. It is magistrate. It is district leader. Right now in New York, we I can't tell you what it's called, but a number of the student protesters have formed a union, for example. And one thing we're showing them here, this is how the machine actually works. So you figure out where you belong in that machine. Are you an influencer? Are you a policy writer? Are you guys just gonna walk in the street and protest? Are you a possible candidate for mayor, congressmen, find out what you understand to the system, because we all can't be everything, but we could be something that can be afford a change. Because progression is not, it's not a person, it's a group. Think of this like the Warriors basketball team was good, not because Curry was good, because everybody knew their job and they loved their job. And then when you took one thing off that job, out of the position, it crumbled. And that's important. You have to figure out what you belong. So run for office, be a district leader. Hell, maybe you might, as we put somebody recently in the board, we put somebody in the board of elections recently, they don't even know it.
See?
Recently, a white woman died recently, and she was at ADA. The DA in New York found out not only was she an ADA who worked on clearing cases, but she was a hardcore member of our movement. Her parents said, now that she's dead, you tell the world what she was really doing. We got to get them in everywhere possible. White sister, but she was about that life. And she made sure when she was at DA, she didn't work on cases. She worked to free people from cases. So it wasn't by accident that she was working with us. So he's right. We got to get in every part of the system. This is on some anti-Nazi. It's like the board. We're the board, y'all. We're gonna be the board. We're gonna get in everything and everywhere to make this work.
Yeah, you know how they right now, they've been putting out articles saying that white supremacists have been infiltrating the police department and government offices for years, right? Well, 5 years down the line, let's hear the reverse of that. The abolitionists have been infiltrating the police departments and all of these different things for years. That's where we should be on the same level that they're doing it, because it is a matter of life and death, slavery and freedom. Are we going to let the slavers be in control of everything, or are we going to make a change? Even sheriff is another one that's an elected official. And I believe over 90% of the sheriffs across the United States are white men as well. So, you know, we're not being represented in these arenas, and we should. People keep asking, what can I do? And I'm going to give you something to do immediately. If you're in Utah or Nebraska, please vote in Utah for Amendment C, which will remove the exception clause from their state constitution. If you're in Nebraska, vote for Amendment 1, which will do the same thing. If you're in New Jersey, they're inserting anti-slavery language into their state constitution. That is, I think I'm going to screw this up, but I believe it's CR 145. CR 145, I'm pretty sure that's it. But in New Jersey, they're having that effort, support that effort if you're in any one of those three states. And the same thing is happening in Tennessee. On the ballot in Tennessee is to remove their exception clause, but that's for 2022. So if you're in any of those four states, that's something that you can do there. If you're not in those four states, don't underestimate the value of changing your perspective. Like, revolutions start in your mind. They don't start in the streets. They start when you change your damn mind about what it is you're dealing with. So that is the most crucial thing you can do. The second thing that you can do is educate yourself. I know we all want to act immediately when we find out, but please don't recreate the wheel. Find out where you can fit in, because there's a lot going on already. So, you know, educate yourself about what it is we're dealing with, and you know, what's happening in your state or community. You'll be shocked. And then also be sure to go to the Abolish Slavery National Network at abolishslavery.us, where we're creating volunteer groups to do things like man phone banks for these elections that are coming up for the exception clauses, and other activities that you can get involved in through that network.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Yo, I'm digging the revolution begins in your mind and not on the streets or on Facebook. So that's good-ish. Anybody, let's see, Kev, anything? You've been quiet for a minute. Keyshawn, Hanif, Minnie. Anybody want to add? Oh, Ty Allen, you still there?
I'm here. I'm here. I had to quench my thirst there.
All right. So we got about 15 minutes left. I think you had one more video. Were you trying to get that one on too, Max?
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, man. I got to jump off. I actually got to go to a rally about this right now uptown.
Peace, brother.
His white man threatening one of our candidates. So we want to stand real close to him and let him know that 6'5", 250 is not just a conversation. It's an action.
That sound like something Kev Dumpson would say, but I ain't gonna say nothing.
Sometimes you gotta do. Sometimes it's not just on paper, brother. Sometimes it's a handshake or a coarse conversation with action verbs. So,
I'll give you a call later, Todd. Thank you for joining us. I know it was unexpected. I appreciate you for doing that. We'll talk.
To chill with my downstate brother Max. I have not seen literally in ages.
I know, right?
More. That's good to
solidarity, brother.
All right. So you have one more video to play. Let's get with that. What is that?
It's a commercial from Utah that showed what they're trying to achieve there. And since this video has been released, they've actually put it on the ballot. So a step forward now. So here's what can be done in your state.
Is slavery still legal in Utah? Well, technically, yes. And it's still legal in many other states. And it's something that ABC4's Brittany Johnson has been looking into. So, Brittany, first question, big question, how is this still legal here?
Well, Don, let me break it down for you. Our state's constitution does say that slavery is illegal, but it is allowed as a form of punishment. Now, I have been looking into this for more than a month, and I've made plenty of calls to our state's leaders, and people I spoke with didn't even know that this was still in Utah's constitution. Now, today I sat down with the president of the NAACP, and they want this removed now. Utah's constitution clearly reads slavery is forbidden, but technically, it's still legal as a form of punishment. Article 1, Section 21 of Utah's constitution reads, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within this state. Janetta Williams, president of the NAACP's Salt Lake branch, is calling for the wording in our state's constitution to be changed.
Is it something that should be done immediately? What they're trying to get around saying that slavery is not okay, but then trying to say, but except, and that part there is very troubling.
Utah isn't alone. Other state constitutions allow slavery as punishment for a crime. The U.S. Constitution does too. The 13th Amendment was ratified in 1865. Now, it abolished most forms of slavery, but still allowed for the opportunity of servitude as legal punishment. And that has yet to change.
Prisons is not a form of slavery, and it shouldn't be a form of slavery. Our ancestors were slaves, and I think if it was the other way around, people would want to say, you know, these things shouldn't be on the books.
Williams says the first step in getting this removed from the state's constitution is to raise awareness.
And we need to work together and make sure that that we don't just sweep it under the rug.
Now, Janetta Williams says the next step is getting a state lawmaker to introduce a bill to abolish slavery as a form of punishment during the upcoming legislative session. Now, the session kicks off in January. Don, back to you.
And as I said, that was from prior 2019. Since then, Representative Sandra Hollins of Utah has introduced this legislation, and it has been accepted, and now it is on the ballot. So we need all kinds of help in those states that are getting this done. Shout out to Representative Sandra Hollins, who is also a member of the Abolish Slavery National Network.
That's what's up. Max, we have a question from Minnie Jones. Minnie, you're up.
So I remember I went to like this little baby Ivy school in Rhode Island for college a year or so, and it was always predominantly a white school, and they wanted to allegedly diversify the student population. So they started a football team, and the students there went from, you know, it just being them, the white students, to having, you know, these burly, busty, men, you know, nice physique. And there was actually in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was race riots on that campus because people just weren't ready to accept that change. And I said that to say, you know, this country and the world over has always had a slave class, and the whole world profited from our slavery, and it's still to this day. So when we make those moves and we abolish slavery, what kind of what can we expect to face? You know, when that playing field is a little bit more level, and we're competing in arenas that we haven't typically been competing in and winning at that, just like we did, you know, in the 20s. So what does that look like for us? What should we be prepared for when that does happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And Brother D. Moss has said it on Facebook already. You know, Be prepared to protect yourself. They didn't give up slavery last time without a literal civil war. So just be prepared. Their economy is driven by legalized slavery and human trafficking. We're trying to get politicians into office who are sympathetic or down with the abolitionist cause, that we might be able to prevent some of the worst occurrences that could potentially happen. But remember, history is a synonym. It's the same crap smelled differently. Or, it may not rhyme, but it sure does sound alike, So just, I don't expect 70% of the police to throw in a pink slip just because we suddenly abolished slavery. I don't expect 70% of the prison guards to say, I don't need to feed my family anymore. Slavery ending is more important because they're freeing all these people. I don't expect that to happen without a fight. These groups like the prison guard union, the police union, are very powerful politically. They don't want to lose jobs. They want more jobs. They want their cousins and nephews and uncles and sons to have jobs in those same places. They're not about to just walk out and walk away because they became sympathetic to the fact that they had been enslaving people. So just, be prepared. That's the best thing I can say. Let's fight the good fight like our ancestors did. And let's be just as prepared for the worst, just like they were. These white people kill you, man. They'll slave you. They'll kill you. They'll do all of it. You've seen it with your own eyes. So I don't put nothing beyond them.
Sure will. All right, y'all. It is 1:51. We're at that closing thought section. Max, I got a question. It's off the abolition tip, but I think it's kind of similar to Minnie's question. What do we do about those Proud Boys that are standing by?
Get your rifles, man. Why are they the only ones walking around with rifles? What are you going to stand there and let them shoot you? For real. Like these we got white supremacists out here walking around fully armed, military vets. And it's not just the Proud Boys. There's other organizations like the Oath Keepers, who are actually oath breakers. And they're much more militant and much more well-armed and much more physically capable. You're talking about ex-Navy SEALs and ex-Green Berets and all of these. So they're out there. We're in a hostile environment. If they will put you in chains and enslave you for profit, nothing is beyond them. What do we do about them? Protect yourself. You can't count on the police to protect you because they're part of these damn groups. You can't count on a lot of the people who swore an oath to defend your rights because they're down with the same groups. It's a frightening situation, but I can't be anything but honest with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat the way things are, So be prepared. They need to be disbanded. The FBI should have disbanded them already, arrested their leadership. If it was a black leadership, we'd be in freaking prison already. They have criminalized us through black identity extremism. Remember that? That was created by the Southern Poverty Law Center, then adopted by the FBI. So we're already being broken up and criminalized. They're getting pats on the back, bottles of water, and lawyers that are paid for by the community.
Yep. That's exactly it. Man, Max, I want to say thank you. I'm going to have to bring you back on again at some point.
I bet you say that to all the guests.
No, man, I just feel like you got so much more I personally need to hear. Now that I got plenty of time at my disposal, I can actually do my research and learn a whole lot more for the next convo. And Minnie Jones just posted on Facebook, you got to come back. Say it out loud, Minnie.
He's been giving me chills for the past couple of hours. Now I'm really gonna sign up and just tell me what to do. I'm down for the cause. Whatever you need, if I can do it, I'm gonna get it done.
Thank you. God bless. And you can check us out at abolitiontoday.org. As I said before, we break down every aspect of this. Some of my favorite episodes are where we address the 6th Amendment and the 8th Amendment, and also where we talked about the presidents and what roles they played in legalized slavery. So we cover all the bases, and you can catch up anytime you want. We're on all major podcast platforms under Abolition Today.
Got you. All right, man. We got to close this off. Our time is up. We're up in 6 minutes. Keyshawn, I know your phone about to die. Go ahead, man. Closing thoughts, brother. I know you was holding in there, praying on that phone. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm like, Lord, please just make it to the end. I just want to say thank you for the information, brother. This is enlightening. I always love the research, man, but you just gave me something that I just want to dig into that rabbit hole and just go deep and figure out what I need to do to learn, to educate myself, and then to move forward. So thank you for this wealth of information, man. I'm like I said, I want to go through those 5 stages, but I don't want to be as pissed off, but I want to be strategic as we move forward, everything that we do. So thank you and God bless you.
All right. Thanks, King. All right. My brother, Kevin Dumpson.
All right. Well, as usual, thank you, Mr. Moss, for the opportunity and for the platform. Thank you to all the panelists. I always enjoy you. Love hearing you, saying what you're thinking. Brother Max, powerful, man. Powerful presentation. I will say a lot of the things I was familiar with, not in the detail that you gave, but I was not familiar at all with the abolitionist movement, being active, and those things of that nature. So I'm grateful for that. I will definitely look into that. It seems that we live in a sad state of affairs right now, man. But it's not new. I mean, it's been in place for a long time. But I'm hopeful that we will take this opportunity to move forward and just move and, if necessary, fight for this cause. And yeah, we need to educate ourselves and rally the troops. So while they're standing back and standing by, we need to be getting ready to stand by and stand back as well. So, I mean, because I wholeheartedly agree with you. I don't plan on painting a target on my back and just going down silently or peacefully. So we need to take heed to all that's being said and done around us and realize how systemic it is. It's not accidental. These people are not for us.
Go.
Thank you.
Welcome. Hanif, you're up next, bro.
You know, there's been so much that's been said, so much to absorb, and so much to learn. And one thing I like about this platform, and the one thing I like about the guests to come on this platform, is that we're all here to learn something. You know, all of us that are on the panel, we're here to learn something. Our guests are here to share knowledge. The people that are watching are here to learn something, and as well as share knowledge that they share with us in the comments. This has been one of the most eye-opening things, because there's a lot of the things that I learned today I did not know. And there were some things that I thought I knew, and I'm now discovering it's just scratching the surface of what I knew. So I'm very grateful for what was said today, and I'm very grateful for the resources that were put out there to be able to dig in and learn more.
All right, thank you. All right, Queen. Mayor Jones.
I agree with Hanif 100%. I feel so privileged to be a part of this platform. And, you know, for the past couple of weeks, I knew sitting down in front of this camera that I stood in the position of a student, just here to learn, and just grateful that, you know, we're putting this information out there. And I love actionable solutions. And I think we don't focus on that enough. And I think a lot of people want to be involved. They just don't know where to start, how to start. So definitely sign up, abolishslavery.us and abolitionstate.org. I know I'm gonna be tuned in, and I just appreciate the wealth of knowledge that was shared today.
Thank you. Brother Max.
Thank you all so much, because the future's in your hand now. I believe that once a person becomes aware of something, they become responsible for it. So you are responsible for the information and the knowledge that you now have. You can forget it, like many people do, and go back to business as normal, or you can change your mind and change your actions and change your motives and change your priorities. And that's what I'm hoping will happen. I really appreciate you all, especially Brother D. Moss. How can I help you running for mayor? How can I help you get that position?
Listen, I'm working with my squad. We're working on just tactical advances, man. I'm not going to say strategic. We've been meeting every day for the last week and a half, ever since I got noticed that they were gonna come after me. So we're working on it, brother. But I don't want to say on this medium, try not to say much on Facebook at all. But we are, we're looking at the folks downtown, and we're looking at that cat that goes back and forth to DC every day. So people don't sleep in that congressional seat. Many, I'm gonna say it again, don't sleep in that congressional seat. You should consider running because you're a monster. But Max, I would definitely keep you posted. I'll be keeping everybody posted. For all of our viewers, please keep in mind, Brother Kevin Dumpson has also announced that he's going to be running for office. So again, the only thing more important than voting is putting yourself in a position to be voted for. And we got so many powerful young brothers and sisters out there that are definitely viable candidates, man. So get that conversation rolling. It ain't got to be me, but we got to get somebody, and we got to take over the house. With that being said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're here every Sunday. This is On Deck. It's all about being black in America. Much love, much peace, much respect to you. We out.